Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. There are some aspects of warfare that rarely change throughout the epochs, even as advancements in technology drastically change the lethality, range, and accuracy of weapons systems. For instance, you have the concept of line of contact. That's where two opposing forces meet and build defensive lines facing one another. The line of contact can exist between two infantry forces facing one another at a tactical level, and it can also exist between two massive fleets positioned at the campaign level, with both sides deployed across entire systems and even sectors. No matter how intimate or large a line of contact is, the general rule when attacking an enemy is to avoid frontal assaults and figure out a way to outflank them, so you can attack them from the rear or the flanks. And ever since man first tamed horses and gained the ability to maneuver at higher speeds than the average foot soldier, military leaders have been using these mobile forces to cause chaos in the rears and flanks of enemy formations. Alexander the Great would use his phalanx formations to keep the enemy assault pinned in place, while he would ride with his companion cavalry around the enemy lines and pull off what's known as the hammer and anvil technique. It's absolutely brutal. In time, humanity developed wheeled cavalry, and then tracked armor cavalry. Eventually, we even had flying cavalry. Along with these new toys, we also created a new breed of soldier, the lightly equipped, slightly crazy, but always heroic airborne trooper. Whether they were dropping out of C-47s or landing in Hueys, the deal is always the same. These soldiers get dropped in places where traditional ground forces just can't reach. Fighting with only weapon systems that they can carry on their backs and whatever they can capture from the enemy, these infantry forces are only able to hold out for short periods of time and ultimately depend on more conventional ground forces to reach them and support them. Airborne units, no matter what country they're fighting for, go into battle expecting heavier losses than normal infantry. It's just a part of the job description. Chances are, if you're looking at an overall campaign map and you see a little pocket of resistance surrounded by enemy forces, you're most likely looking at airborne troopers. They just are more likely to stay and fight. They have a different mentality and different mission, and oftentimes there also isn't a clear line of retreat for them. Now, as weapons technology and tactics change, there are fluctuations in how useful airborne troopers are, depending on what part of history you're looking at. More liberal democracies nowadays would probably not accept the kind of casualties that mass drops would most likely create. Air defenses are increasingly cheaper and more potent than ever, and easily capable of taking out transport planes or helicopters dozens of miles away from the LZ. It's very possible that in the near future we see some huge advancement in defensive technology for airplanes or helicopters that allows us to use this tactic once again. And because this is a Star Wars channel, I thought it'd be a great idea to take a look at some futuristic designs from the Star Wars universe, and also talk about my favorite dropship in all of Star Wars, and that is the Gauntlet. Before we get to the Gauntlet, let's take a look at the competitors. First, we have the Republic's workhorse, the LAAT. This is a modular system design along with the all-terrain tactical enforcer, the primary infantry fighting vehicle used by their clones. Different variants of the LAAT can either carry a full rifle squad of clone troopers into battle or even a full ATTE, which itself could carry smaller recon walkers. This is a really amazing design. The fact that all of these weapon systems were integrated with each other made the Republic forces very mobile during the Clone Wars. And that was important because the clones were outnumbered most of the time like 10-1. And so the LAAT system gives the clones every advantage they can get. The only problem is when you design a modular system that carries a tank into battle, you're gonna have to lose something in exchange. And with the LAAT, what's lost here is speed. They also don't have deflector shields, making the LAAT a sitting duck when it's engaged by enemy fighters. And so the LAAT system definitely needs a fighter escort in contested airspace. In uncontested airspace, the LAAT can serve as a surprisingly potent gunship with its 4 composite beam pinpoint laser turrets, multiple anti-personnel laser guns, and of course, the belt-fed missile system that can take out heavily fortified positions or enemy armor. Simply put, this bird fits all of the Grand Army of the Republic's needs. It's just not the best all-around troop transport. Plus, it requires a lot of resources to keep running, so it might not be the best choice for a smaller military force. Next, we have the Rebel Alliance UT-60D. Officially categorized as a troop transport, the UT-60D handles and flies like most of the ships in the Incom Corporation ecosystem. If you can fly an X-Wing or a T-16 Skyhopper, the U-Wing control scheme should be familiar and very easy to pick up. Longer and thinner than the LAAT, the U-Wing is perhaps one of the most agile and nimble troop transports out there. Much of the ship's length is due to its two massive S-foils, which can open during combat situations, increasing heat efficiency on the ship and also increasing the overall coverage envelope of the ship's deflector shield system. The U-wing isn't designed for dogfighting, but it can definitely hold its own quite well. Like most Incom products during the Galactic Civil War, the U-wing accidentally fell into the hands of rebel forces thanks to Bail Organa. You see, Incom Corporation had they were known for hiring very independent-minded designers and engineers, and many of these individuals defected from the organization when the Galactic Empire nationalized them. And so aside from that first batch of U-wings, most of the U-wings used by the Rebel Alliance had to be assembled in smaller Rebel factories, sort of like how the X-Wing was. This means there might be some liability issues with these models. Furthermore, the U-wing preserves its low profile and maneuverability thanks to the fact that its storage and troop compartments are on a smaller scale. A single LAAT could bring up to 30 fully equipped clone troopers or an ATTE into battle. A U-wing might not need escorts on the way to a target, but it can only bring around 8 rebel troopers into battle. The U-wing could also provide some light support to ground forces with its door gunners, but it lacks the same firepower as a LAAT. Next up, we have the AAL, or First Order Transporter. This ship is really cool because it's clearly inspired by World War II landing boats like the LCVP, otherwise known as the Higgins boat. This vessel was heavily used during the D-Day invasion of German-occupied Normandy. Mass-produced out of plywood, which allowed the ship to be far more seaworthy than its metallic counterparts, the Higgins featured a forward-facing ramp, which would drop during landings and disgorge massive amounts of troops. This allowed for the Higgins boat to stay in shallow water during beach landings with only the front of the vessel grounded. This meant that the Higgins could return and get more troops and ferry them in. This design feature had a second purpose, which was a bit messed up. A frontal landing ramp completely exposes the assaulting unit to enemy fire, which tends to prevent these soldiers from bunching up in or around the vehicle. The First Order AAL is designed on similar principles. It's really more of a last-mile solution, though, and is lightly armed and not equipped with a hyperdrive. It can, however, carry 20 fully armed stormtroopers into battle. Deployed in large formations, these cheap ships can easily turn the tide of any ground engagement. The Empire also had their own interesting take on the troop transport, and no, I'm not talking about the Lambda-class shuttle. Although it was commonly used to deploy stormtrooper units, the ship was originally designed as a luxury shuttle for high-ranking Imperial officers. Instead, today I want to take a look at the TIE Reaper Attacker Lander. The TIE Reaper has a similar wing structure to the TIE Striker, which was an in-atmosphere superiority fighter, which means unlike most Star Wars ships, this thing had wings that could actually generate lift. This puts less stress on the ship's inertial compensator and repulsor lifts while flying in atmosphere. The TIE Reaper was a top-of-the-line ship. Unlike most TIE line ships, it had a Class 1 hyperdrive, robust shields, and enough engine power to allow it to keep up with the U-wing. The TIE Reaper wasn't mass-produced and was mainly used by Special Forces units like the Death Troopers. It also was equipped with a pair of laser cannons, making it a pretty lightly armed ship. So you've seen the field, you've seen some of the best troop transports that the galaxy has to offer, but now we're going to talk about a ship that is in a class of its own, the Kom'rk, otherwise known as the Gauntlet Starfighter. Built by Mandal Motors, the Gauntlet's design is very Mandalorian indeed, and by that I mean the Mandalorians live very violent lives, and so it's only rational for them to have the best equipment money can buy. And so the Kom'rk, just like Mandalorian armor, is not something you'll see mass deployed in the Empire or the Republic. It's something very specialized and designed for only smaller forces. The Kom'rk Class Fighter, first of all, is massive. It might be in the same class as an LAAT, but it's easily 2 to 3 times longer. With a 68-meter length and 52.4-meter wingspan, it's closer to size to a Gazanti-class cruiser than it is to something like a U-wing. But thanks to its advanced propulsion system and Class 1 hyperdrive, the Kom'rk outclasses every other dropship when it comes to both hyperspace and also subspace speed. The Kom'rk featured the same rotating wing design that could be found on the smaller Fang fighter, making it incredibly maneuverable and also confusing for enemies to track. And so the Kom'rk, like the U-wing, is able to hold its own in dogfights against much smaller starfighters. Furthermore, the heavy armament that can be found on board, which includes 4 laser cannons and a concussive missile launcher, meant that the Kom'rk was a true assault transport. It can soften up a target before delivering its infantry soldiers. Even more impressive is how this gauntlet disgorges troopers while under attack. It doesn't use a ramp or some kind of side door. It literally drops troopers out of an opening in the bottom of the ship. You see, because most Mandalorian super commandos are equipped with jetpacks, they don't actually need to wait for a ship to land before exiting. They can just jump out. And so the Kom'rk never has to really slow down and land in order to drop its troops, allowing for incredibly fast insertions and also recoveries. This tactic allows the Mandalorians to have the element of surprise on their side, which means that enemies don't have time to organize and carry out a proper counteroffensive. The Mandalorians, through this genius design, has basically eliminated the most dangerous phase of any airborne operation. Being able to drop 24 warriors on any parts of the battlefield unharassed gives the Mandalorians a huge advantage. The only drawback with the Kom'rk is that it is super expensive. Also, that rotating wing thing around the cockpit, well, that's probably very maintenance heavy. But that's kind of okay because the Mandalorians, as a people, spend a huge amount of their GDP on military defense. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comment section below which of these troop transports are your favorites. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.